Welcome everyone to our first session here in room one. We have Peter who's going to be talking about the real ROI of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So without further ado, over to yourself.
Thank you for the short introduction, Paul. As mentioned in the keynote, there were some slight name changes, and I'm one of the presenters who did adjust the names into their slides. So if you find something that's still not correct, please inform me in the chat. Also, during the session, please feel free to add any questions in the chat. It's up to Paul as a moderator to interrupt me, or let's go through the questions at the end. Also, feel free to connect. I'll provide the information also on the last slide. But that's it for now. Let's dive in very quickly. So very short or brief introduction about myself. My name is Pieter. I live in Belgium. I work in Belgium most of the time for a company called The Flow. We mainly focus on these three areas there, but my main expertise, let's say, is focusing on digital workplace and employee experience, and of course, Copilot, which is covering, well, maybe not only those top two, but even the top three. I was lucky enough to be using Copilot since August last year in the early access program is what it's called. So I've seen a lot of evolution happening in Copilot, which is a very good thing, by the way. What else to say? I'm married, I have 2 kids, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP, which means I spend a lot of free time into diving into all the goodness of Microsoft, like sudden name changes. And it also opens the door to get in touch with the product teams back in Redmond to bring the real world into their product teams. That's enough about me. I think you're here to hear me talk about ROI of Copilot. First of all, I don't know if it's going to be possible. I think you can use the React buttons. Let's do a quick check if the React buttons work. Can you give me a thumbs up if you had, and somebody's too early, sorry for that, if you had a metal ruler when you were back in school? Just see if somebody had those. I see Tattoo, for example. Let's see, yeah, some hands up, some people surprised. Well, they were not meant to hit somebody, but they did have a special power. And it's also somewhere in the screen here, because yeah, it's a Dolly rendered image, obviously. What you see on the right side is a pencil. And for those who don't know or who didn't have that metal ruler, well, with the pencil, you could write on the back of your metal ruler, like formulas, for example, right? Not saying that you should, but some of us might have done that in the past. It's cool. And those things, well, it's very simple that those stupid things gave us superpowers. Now, looking a couple of years ago, what happened? Of course, OpenAI launched not Copilot, ChatGPT, right? And let's say it didn't take a while before students started to discovering it and using it. And a lot of schools were really eager to, well, maybe we should try to detect if our students are using it. We should try to forbid it. But it didn't take very long before they saw, well, maybe we should learn our students how to use it properly, right? And before that measure, also ChatGPT gave students superpowers. Now, a year and a half ago, I think, more or less, Microsoft invested over, and that's what the rumor said, over 15 billion US dollars into OpenAI. And this caused the transaction or the interaction between OpenAI and Microsoft. So now Microsoft used the large language model of ChatGPT and built their own product around it called Copilot. Of course, there are some differences there. I'm not going to go too deep into detail, but if you like, let's go post some chats and we'll talk about it later on. But one of the key differences between a ChatGPT or maybe other large language models and Copilot is that Copilot is fully embedded or integrated into your digital workplace if you're using Microsoft 365, obviously. Something else, I don't know, some of you probably remember Cortana, right? Cortana was a thing a couple of years ago, but I don't know where it went. It disappeared. With Copilot, they're really, really serious, right? So a lot of new laptops, and I've seen some of them myself. I don't have any yet. So not only Microsoft laptops, but even different brands now start to come up on the market with a dedicated Copilot button, right? So Microsoft, again, is really, really serious about that. If you missed it, and I'm going to add a QR code in one of the last slides. There was a really big announcement. Monday evening at least in Belgium, Monday evening, where they used Satya Nadella to talk about a new wave of Copilot. Again, they're not going to hire or use the CEO of Microsoft for a gimmick. So again, very serious. Since I'm just looking at the screen of the participants, there are some people here which I do know by name. Some, or let's say, if I'm honest, most of you, I have no idea who you are or what your background is. So what I always tend to do with these kind of sessions is start with a very short introduction. I got 4 very simple use cases of what we are talking about. Which Microsoft 365 Copilot is this? So 4 very simple examples. And the first one, if you're visiting not only this session, and I hope you do visit other sessions throughout the day as well, you might end up in your inbox by the end of the day or early mornings, depending on where you are, and find a lot of email threads in there. Maybe some Teams chats as well, probably. But let's talk about these email threads. And this is a real life example. I really hate to use Microsoft slides. It's nothing personal. I just prefer to use my own materials. So I blurred out some stuff. And you can see it's quite a long conversation. It's approximately 10 emails long. And there are just some chats in there. There's some copy pasting from documents. There are a lot of chats going on in there. So what I do at the end of the day when I see this kind of threads is I just open up the first email or one of the threads. And at the top, I find this summary by Copilot button. It's very easy. You do not have to think too hard about that or think about, oh, maybe I should start using Copilot to summarize it. It's a button. It's right there. Just press it. Give it a couple of seconds. Sometimes it's 2, 3, sometimes it's 10 seconds. It depends a bit on the length of your conversation as well. And after a while, again, a couple of seconds, it gives you a very good summary. Before you start questioning this, I have some customers who were quite skeptical about this feature because they said, well, you're talking about maybe 5 or 10 emails, but we got conversation of 40, 45 emails. Now, he did this right directly in that same meeting. He just tested it and it worked just fine, just the way you would expect it. Now, the longer your conversation is, the longer your summary will be. And I think that's a good thing. You do not want to have let's say 40 pages of conversations summarized in 3 sentences. So it gives you a very good idea. It's also showing you references, and that's something that you can see throughout Copilot, wherever you use it. It starts giving you references. Where did he get this content from? Okay, so that's the first. The second one is to wrap up your day. So we're all very busy people, I can imagine. So we can just go to Copilot, the Copilot chat. It's called BizChat these days as of last Monday. And you can use it, of course, and give it your own prompt. So this is just an example prompt. We're not going to deep dive too much on the details of this particular prompt. But what do I ask here? Give me an overview of what my day looked like. I want to have some logical topics highlighted. I'm also interested in documents that were changed around me, which are likely to be relevant. I also want to see what action items I might have missed during the day in emails, in Teams chats. Of course, it's the end of the day, so I also want to have a glimpse on my agenda of tomorrow. I know you can go to Outlook for that, but now it's just everything in one simple interface, one question, and it gives me all the answers back. What else? Since I'm some kind of a nerd, I also asked for missed Gen AI headlines in the tech news I might have missed during the day, and a silly quote of the day, just because we can. And this looks something like this. So recently changed files, some action points. I got some planned meetings, the taglines, and not very funny, but at least he tried, or he added a smiley at the back, a quote of the day. So again, here you can see at the bottom of the screen, there are 38 references used for Copilot to generate this answer. So in all of this, well, let's say this entire answer, you can track back where the information came from, just click on it and you get the full content of the original source, let's say. The third one, we're almost there, is creating presentations. I know it's still a work in progress, but I think you can use it very well to create last-minute presentations. So I have a Word document here, and we're not going to read it out loud fully, but just to give you a glimpse on what this document looks like. It's a quite regular document. It has a title, introduction, some subtitles, some bullet points, tables. It's a fictive Word document or a proposal for which obviously I used Copilot to generate, right? You wouldn't expect less of me. So now that I have this document, let's imagine you want to propose this last minute to a customer, but you didn't prepare anything, and you do not want to scroll through pages and pages on a full screen in a meeting room. So I go to my PowerPoint and I start with the corporate template. In this case, the flow, you can see some, it's partially blurred, but you can see what I'm talking about. So there are some layouts there in the master template. Next, I'm just going to ask Copilot, create a presentation from this file directly in in PowerPoint. You will see it starts to generate some topics, right? It's building up. And eventually it says, I've drafted 16 slides. And I think this is, by the way, a very interesting and important word. It drafted 16 slides. So for some people, they might be immediately usable, but in many occasions, I would, actually always, I would suggest to go through each of the slides, modify a little bit, like it sounds a bit more like you, right? Makes sense, right? And this is what it could look like. So again, we're not going to go through each of these slides, but this is just a high-level overview. And you have to believe me, I didn't touch any of these slides. So it took out some of the key topics. Some of them are almost literally the titles in my slides, but sometimes it just derived some sections or topics directly from the document. You can see it also used some imagery, which I didn't provide. So it's just taking that and it's just making it more pretty inside the template of my organization. And what's not on this slide, but you should try it yourself, it will always, for each of these slides, integrate key notes, let's say key speaker notes for each of those slides. So there are some text you can just literally try to read while presenting the slide. And there are some parts referencing to this particular section in the document. Again, the original source document. All right, I think you almost get the picture. So last thing, and this is, I think, one of the most killer feature at this moment for me personally, when talking about Copilot, it's to attend or sometimes not attend meetings, right? And I think this is an interesting new feature. It's rolling out in Outlook now. So instead of just saying, I will accept, I'm going to decline, I will say tentative. First of all, when you say tentative or you do not react, because some people just don't like to react to invitations, the organizer, or at least the people in the meeting, have no clue if you're going to join or not. So imagine if you are a manager, if you're a team lead or whatever, this is going to be a quite expensive meeting because people are expecting, well, maybe we should wait for Pieter and maybe he's late like usual. Oh, I didn't say that. Damn it, it's recorded. So there's this new feature that's called follow. Now the impact of follow is it works in both ways. So the first thing you'll see as you're presenting in the meeting, you will get a notification that looks something like this: help others to catch up later. So it's telling the people in the meeting that some people clicked on the follow button and they want to have a recap in Copilot later on. I know now it says record and take notes, but this screenshots, it varies a bit if you have a Copilot license or not. But again, you get notified that somebody is following the meeting. Let's imagine somebody was very well aware of me just following the meeting and he or she clicked on, Copilot button. So the transcription, and in this case, also the recording started, which are two separate things, by the way. So what do I see on this screen in the recap tab after my meeting? First, of course, you see the video. It's very clear. It's a recording and you can watch the entire meeting from the beginning to the start, beginning to the end. But in this case, it's like 45 minutes or so. So if you have to do this for every meeting that you missed during the evenings, you're going to have a lot of long evenings. So there are some tools for that. First of all, to save you time, on the right-hand side, there are some AI notes. And these AI notes, you might know them if you have been using Teams Premium in the past, because this is one of the overlaps between Teams Premium and the Microsoft 365 Copilot feature set. So these are, well, it's called Intelligent Meeting Recap, if you want to Google or Bing or Copilot on it. So it's automatically generating these AI notes. Important to understand is that these notes are automatically generated after the meeting. You cannot change them and you cannot really influence them. So it's just Copilot saying it's the end of the meeting. I'm going to generate AI notes based on my logic or while reasoning with what's being said during the meeting. There are also mentions, which is very interesting if you were mentioned during meetings, especially which you did not attend, and the full screen transcript, which you obviously will never read. Now, at the bottom of your recording, there are these three different tabs, let's call them. So the first one, the speaker tab, it's showing you how do you call this, the ticks, or when somebody was speaking during the meeting. So you can see, obviously, Thomas was taking the lead or did talk for quite a long time. Then I have on the second line some red dots, so I'm probably just good at interrupting people, and then there are some other people. The second screenshot is the topics. So topics are also automatically generated by Copilot. So I'm a Microsoft Loop MVP, so obviously for this screenshot, I just took Copilot in Loop. So let's imagine you missed a meeting, but you're only interested in the topic that was discussing Copilot in Loop. You just click on that topic and it jumps directly into the video, into the recording, to that particular part where that topic was discussed. The same for chapters. And I know there's some overlap here, but let's say in less structured meetings, these chapters become very, very interesting. So they're more like a cluster of topics. If you're only interested in, let's say, the discussions about a certain topic or the conclusion, then the conclusion will probably be a separate chapter, which you can just jump right into. Right. So this just to give you 4 simple examples on what the value is, on what we're talking about. It can do so much more, but of course I only have so much time. So let's move on. All right, I see no questions yet. That's good. That means that everything is clear, or you fell asleep again. Let's hope not. A quick question again. You do not have to raise hands, but you can if you like. I'm always wondering how many people attending this session who know all of these icons on the screen here. So again, if you recognize some of them, and I imagine you recognize Copilot at the center, but you might also recognize the Visio, Power BI. On the left-hand side, you see Power Platform, so premium connectors. On the right-hand side, it's another P, but it stands for project. So project for the web, for example. You get some Viva Suite, you get Clipchamp Premium. So what do these logos have in common? They all cost additional money on top of your Office or Microsoft 365 license, right? But for most of these licenses, you just had to, let's say, give half a reason to IT or service desk, or I don't know how your licenses are being spread within your organization, but just give them half a reason or maybe to your manager and you get an additional license. I want to manage some project, you get a project license. I want to get some more better visual insights, you get a Power BI Pro or Premium license. You want to organize charts, let's go for Visio, right? You get the picture. But why am I showing you this? Because this is interesting when you have a discussion about the price point of Copilot, because now we're in the era of AI, or maybe the era of Copilots, as Microsoft calls it. Everybody's zooming in, and I think too hard on Copilot. But then again, it generated this time slot for me, this opportunity to talk about this. So what I'll be covering for the rest in this session, we'll talk about a certain perspective. We're going to talk about a magical or maybe not so magical formula. We're going to find the real value of Copilot. We're also going to talk about measurement, and because I always want to leave you with some practical hands-on things you can take home if you're not home already, home with you, some practical tips and tricks to move further on with Copilot within your organization or for your customers. I'm going to go very quickly into the past. November 1st, 2023. Some of you might know what that date means. So that date was the official announcement of Microsoft releasing a Copilot to the public. There were some catches though. So you needed to buy them through an enterprise agreement. So not through your licensing partners, so really enterprise agreements, which means large organizations only, some larger enterprises. You had to buy at least 300 licenses. So that's we're going to talk about that. Of course, $30 for 300 people. That's over 100K you need to spend. And you had to have Microsoft 365 licenses in order to be able to use or buy Copilot licenses. So that's a big guess, right? That's a big guess for a lot of organizations. Only 2 months later, and I remember this very well when those news articles or tech community posts were released by Microsoft, January 16 this year, Microsoft changed its strategy from these very big requirements to the fact that you can buy licenses per one. So if you just want to try it, or you're self-employed, for example, you just want to have one license and you only have an Office 365 license, so not a Microsoft 365 license, you could just buy them. Also through CSP, so it's just your licensing partner. And what this really cost was something, well, for me, it was really amazing because finally, it was always in the name, but finally we're able to pilot Copilot. Right? I know you are the co-pilot, so you have to instruct everything, but the organizations, everybody just wanted to test it, try to find the value. What's in it for me? Now, what this also cost is that it exploded my agenda because all these companies just wanted to start discovering it together with somebody with some experience, some hands-on experience on the product, where it's going. And most of all, they just wanted to find out what is the real ROI of Microsoft Copilot. And again, I changed this slide a couple of minutes before I started this session. So this is the new naming. Okay, now when you just, I'm going to say Google it, right, or Bing. If you just search online for ROI Copilot, you probably quite fast stumble onto whatever blog page that talks about a very simple ROI formula. Again, this was this magical formula I was talking about. This is usually when I do this in person where people start taking pictures, where I say, no, hold on, don't take that many pictures yet. Save those pictures for later. So when you look at this formula, it's very simple. What's the value? You want to detract the cost of the investment, and you want to, divide it by the cost of that investment. That's the simple formula, and you multiply it by 100 to get to a percentage that says something about the ROI. So what do we know to fill in this formula? I already mentioned it, $30 license cost. Now for what? That's a very good question. In the past, let's say the early months this year, I had a lot of discussions, and there were some discussions with, I'm going to take one example of one of the customers I work for, with an IT manager. And you probably all know IT managers, they also are in charge for buying licenses or assigning licenses. So this person said to me, well, for $30 or $35, depends a bit, I have a full collaborative suite for my employees. So now you're telling me to purchase an additional $30 license for something that's maybe a gimmick or hasn't proved itself yet. So we don't know what we're going to get out of this. Okay, understandable. So lesson one, do not have this discussion with an IT manager. Second, and this is a real life example, this was the same customer in the afternoon, same day, had a discussion with one of their R&D directors. We were talking about their flow of work, their collaboration processes at their level, let's say. And they were just talking about, well, we have hired somebody who's taking meeting notes. She's typing really fast, really good, correctly, proper grammar, but she obviously she doesn't have any idea on the deep dive knowledge of what was being discussed during those meetings. And well, or it was a woman actually. She was just mentioning a lot of pain points of meetings. So I talked to her and I said, in the near future, because then it wasn't possible yet, in the near future, you will be able to get something called Copilot, which could take automatically meeting notes. You can ask questions during a meeting, after a meeting, generate reports. You know the drill, right? And I talked to her and I said, well, it comes with a price tag. And when I just said it's $30 per person per month, she just started laughing that away, because in their kind of business, they spend thousands, sometimes millions to projects that are not even going to be released. So with this $30 taking away real pains, and I only talked about a very specific use case, well, there's a lot of value into this, well, just $30 price tag. So that's what I was talking about. It's all about perspective, how you look at it and who you're talking or who you're discussing this with, right? Back to our formula. So we know $30, that's a very simple one. You could have just looked that up online, but the value. Let's look at the value. And I have a very simple example. Again, fictive numbers, but to make it more tangible. So we get an employee, let's say monthly cost $4,000. If you have a 21 workday month, that means that's around almost $24 hourly cost. Now compare this to Copilot. You also want to see how many time they saved, and you want to see how much value it delivers. So in this case, it's 45. This person saved 45 minutes per week. Honestly, this is rather on the low side. If I see the questionnaires we're sending out now, the time saved is much higher than 45 minutes on average. But again, let's just take 45 minutes. That is 3 hours saved per month. You just combine this together with the hourly cost and you end up with $71, right? So multiplied by 100, that's 138%. So if you show this to a CFO, for example, he or she will probably be pleased by looking at this. But the problem is this formula is so limited, right? Because, and I have some slides on this, so I can show you this. So it's not even 71, you have to detract the cost from it. So $41. That is not money that you saved, because very simply, your employee will still cost $4,000 per month. And you have to buy the additional Copilot license. So you didn't save anything, but what you did save is time, right? Or as a customer said very recently, free resources. Yeah, that's more or less how you could put it. So instead of just looking at this very simple ROI calculation, let's look at the real investment, or the investment that you put into what value it creates for you as an organization. So what we just saw for now was all related to time, right? It saved me time. I'm more productive. I did more things in less time. But there's much more to look at this. And this is maybe the key slide for the entire session. I got some other ones as well, but this is very key. Time is important, but what about quality improvements? You were never able to answer to very hard emails. You had to pull in a colleague to help you out with discussions. You want to, well, maybe to improve your proposals or your writing. What about creativity? Also hard to measure, but it is a clear value that Copilot delivers, right? This is quite well known. You can be much more creative. You can ask or discuss with Copilot or iterate over certain ideas, and it can generate ideas for you which you would never came up with yourself. What about upskilling? just personal experience. I was having trouble with some JSON scripting. So if you're using SharePoint and you want to do some list view formatting, for example, you need JSON skills to write or to reformat things. And I have a colleague or a couple of colleagues who are quite good at JSON formatting, but they're also very busy. So now I just asked Copilot, and I just threw it in some of the sample JSON scripts. I asked it to rewrite it just in a functional way, and it gave me back JSON queries or JSON scripts while explaining what it does and how it's built up. Same with Excel. If you have a very large formula, I think we all know the pains of a comma or a semicolon or a bracket that's missing somewhere, right? Just throw it into Copilot and ask what's wrong with this formula. And the last one, and very important one, is the impact of being more efficient, being more creative, being able to deliver more quality, the feeling that you learn more through this upskilling. It has an impact on your employee happiness, and that is also impacting your employee retention. So as an organization, these are all, let's say, almost equal to each other in terms of trying to find the value of Copilot. But time is very easy to detect and to deep dive on. So remember this one employee, 3 hours per month. What if you would scale this within his or her team to, let's say, 30 people? So if you scale this to 30 people, you can do the calculation yourself, but you can believe me, that is almost on a yearly basis, almost 100 man days, right, working days, that you can use for different things. So let that sink in, right? Just applying this $30 license could cause you 100 days of work, which you can spend on other things. And of course, you can try to imagine what this looks like when you scale this further on within your organization. But this is just more the theory. What I would suggest, and again, this is just information I got from out of practice and rolling out projects at customers, I see more and more customers setting up this very specific Copilot project backlog. So what they do is they fill in all the projects or tasks or R&D projects very often they never got time for, but they want to check these things off by the time they saved in Copilot. So after a couple of months, maybe after a year, there should be some projects ticked off of that list. So that's clearly showing to the sponsor of your Copilot licenses what the value is, right? All right, I think you get the picture. So time is important, but it's not everything. There's just a lot more to it. But to make it work, Copilot in your organization, it's really not like just flipping a switch. I know from a pure technical perspective, and again, I'm not talking about data quality or adoption or whatever. If you want to enable Copilot, it is indeed flipping a switch. It's buying a license and assigning it, but it's never going to work. You will never get the value out of it if you just do it like that. So I got some practical next steps, and you will probably see some similarities in between topic 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but I'll get back to that at the end of the session. So first thing I would suggest you to do is to find knowledge workers. Why? Because they work at a laptop. They're probably used to IT rolling out new features, features that often change because many of us now work in the cloud, so cloud technology obviously changes. But what is really key here is to involve from the start the managers. And this is from a study from Microsoft. This is one of the outcomes of their early access program. So the companies where Copilot delivered the most value is where they involved the managers. And there are just two very simple reasons that are causing this. So the first one is they should be trained, I'm not saying they all are, but they should be trained to clearly instruct people. So if they're used to do that, they will also be able to clearly instruct Copilot, because as you probably know, that is what Copilot expects from you. If you give it a very a high-level question, you get high-level answers back, right? And the second one is their influence factor in the team. Because normally a manager, if it's a good one, he or she should probably have some influence over the team. One example, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, might be during the pandemic or maybe before, maybe after, when they were rolling out Teams in your organization. If there were some managers, and I had some customers, and there were some managers who were quite reluctant to using Teams, right? Why should they use Teams? They're already using a SharePoint, and they already have email, and if necessary, they have Skype for Business, right? So for those teams where the managers were really against using Teams, well, nobody in the team started using Teams. So just turn it around. In this case, managers who are trained to use Copilot and they believe in its powers and they have influence within the team, well, it's not rocket science why you should include managers. The second one is, I already mentioned it briefly, is to include their team. Why? Because of the influence of the manager, but also because people are, well, those people in the team, they know each other. They are colleagues. They're probably already eager to share things with each other. Could be about CRM, ERP, whatever project they're doing, or technology, or yeah, you can imagine. But what if they could share things about Copilot? What's saving me time? What's giving me these superpowers? Also, what's not working at all yet? But that's also important that they have some sort of a way to influence each other. Okay, so managers, enthusiastic managers, that's a key word there, and their team. The third practical tip is when you give sessions inside an organization or you receive sessions, maybe that's some feedback you can give. And this is something I learned the hard way. Do not try to overwhelm everyone. Again, I took 4 simple scenarios at the beginning of this session. I could have shown you 100 different things. But if you want to blow them away, you're probably pushing them away. So imagine being inspired with hundreds of different Copilot use cases, and you go back to your desk after the session, you probably have no idea where to start. You might have remembered 1 or 2 things, you try it out, maybe it's not working the way you want, you see this pile of work, you get back to your work and you forget about whatever you saw. So this is really, so the next slide is really important. Again, this is something we learned the hard way. What we now try to do with our pilot group at first, when they receive their Copilot license, is ask them some questions. So just some guiding questions. They do not need to answer all of those questions, obviously. So this is something you usually do in a workshop, in a very interactive workshop. So everybody, as an individual, needs to think for him or herself, what tasks do I often do on a weekly basis? Where do I spend the most of my time in? Where do I find the quality a bit too low? Also, this, what is it, for the fifth one? Where do I frequently need help from my colleagues? Or what tasks do I often procrastinate? So tasks you do not like to do. These are possibly tasks that can transform into Copilot hero scenarios. And again, don't try to focus on 10 or 20 different outcomes that you get out of asking these questions, but do some voting, some dot voting, whatever workshop technique you like to use, but focus on 3, maybe maximum 5 hero scenarios for each individual. And what's really important here is that we ask, and you see it very literally, we ask questions related to tasks. So we're not going to, that's a really good discussion, but I'm really not a fan of these very simple personas, right? So you're working in, you're an HR BP, right? For something like that. So these are probably hero scenarios you can use. No, there might be a lot of HR BPs in your organization, but maybe they have different kinds of tasks. Maybe they have their different ways of doing things, preparing for things. So think of this from an individual perspective. So the key thing here to remember is that the real power of Copilot really hides in creating new habits. by implementing these hero scenarios. So if they ended up with, let's say, these 3 scenarios, make them write them down on a sticky note, for example, put it on their laptop or their screen, and they need to learn to make these 3 scenarios into their habit. There are some studies on habits. I think it's a couple of weeks usually before something becomes actually a habit. But as of then, these users will also see the edge cases or the other use cases besides their hero scenarios for which they can use Copilot. So this is a very good strategy that has been proven in our projects, seems to be working very well. All right, on to number 4, set up a center of excellence, including the ambassadors. So first of all, there are a lot of Copilot announcements by Microsoft, as we just saw on last Monday, but also just any weekday, Microsoft could just announce something new, or you might have to take a look into the roadmap. There are so many topics there. So it's up to your center of excellence to filter out the most relevant topics and also make it your own. So make it sound or look a bit more like it's coming from your organization. Not everybody likes the real American Microsoft look and feel in Western Europe. So that's just a cultural thing that I got as a feedback from a lot of customers. What they also should be doing is organize sessions for their Copilot user group. It could be webinars, could be physical sessions. I have 2 customers who have a Copilot cafe. So one of them is doing them every 3rd Thursday of the month. So they bring everyone physically together. They have a speaker who's there for 10 or 15 minutes, more or less. And then they just have discussions, some snacks. So it's really bringing people together, right? So this is really key. This is a bit like the first topic. So Microsoft also has a lot of knowledge material, adoption material, tips and tricks, movies, whatever. They have a lot of material. So also here it's task of your center of excellence to filter out what's relevant and make it your own. There's a link there. You can see it at the line, but I can provide you the link anyway. So it's linking to the adoption site of Microsoft. It's microsoft.com or adoption.microsoft.com/copilot, something like that. They should also be the experts within your organization. And if they're not able to become the real experts, just try to involve 1 or 2 consultants whose daily task is to get up to speed with all the new stuff of Copilot. So you can become an expert as a center of excellence within the organization. And the last one, I'm going to talk about that in a second, and this is really, really important, is to track and to measure the usage of your Copilot licenses or people in the organization. As part of the 4th one, I just split this into like a 4A and a 4B. So this is the 2nd one, set up a community. And I had so many discussions about this, people who are using Yammer in the past, but didn't properly succeed to set it up. So they're not eager to move forward with Yammer or now Viva Engage. I think it's a brilliant platform these days, but you can use a Microsoft team. You can use whatever community tool or technology you want to use. I don't care. Make sure that you can connect people across your organization. Because even if you work in HR, but somebody else is working in manufacturing, maybe they have some good use cases or things to share, things that work or don't work. That was my 2nd bullet here. So share ideas in a community. Also, I should make this a separate bullet point. Make sure to put somebody in charge to manage this community. Because as you might know, if you've seen communities in the past, if you do not manage them, they'll just die. So you need to put some effort into that. Also use this as a feedback channel. So if somebody's saying this is not working, that's fine, but it's good to know. Maybe it isn't working, or maybe this person doesn't have the right Office release channel, or doesn't have the right language set up in their Outlook client. Because if you don't have this, everybody who's using Copilot who finds some difficulty here and there, they will just be ending up creating a ticket, service desk ticket, right? So the service desk, you all know, we're already not able to manage all of the incoming tickets. So even more feedback is going there. And also try to use this community to detect these new hero scenarios. There will be new ones. You can update a list, for example, you gather through questioning people, so you can update them. And also if you find enthusiastic people who share information, they can be your next ambassadors, which you can add to your center of excellence, right? So these are just some of the topics that should be covered by setting up a community. And I personally think communities are mandatory when rolling out technologies such as Copilot. The fifth and the last tip or technique I would like to share with you is, maybe I should rebrand this to your Copilot compass, right? It's like when you put all of your Copilot licensees on a ship and you set sail and you have no compass, you have no idea where you're going at. You know, you're just out there on the water, but you have no idea where should I go now. Same with Copilot. If you do not measure it, you do not know what the value is, and you also have no idea if you need to steer a bit from left to right or provide some additional sessions, webinars, trainings. Maybe your IT environment is really crap. All right, garbage in, garbage out, information policy, information management. But focusing on measuring and adapt, there are two types of categories. The first one is passive data, which you probably all know. And the second one is active data. And you need to combine them. You absolutely need to combine them to find the actual value of Copilot. The first one, for those who are rather technical or have access to Microsoft 365 admin centers, you can easily find input there. In which applications is Copilot being used today? What are the most used features in those separate, for example, Office applications or Biz chats? How much is it being used? And who is or isn't using it? But you see, especially this last one, for example, this is quite binary. Right? It's you're using it or you're not using it. And the example about the presentation generation is maybe a good one. So imagine you're a commercial person with not a lot of technical skills and PowerPoint skills. You try to put your attention on the customer and the discussions with your customer. If somebody from a commercial perspective transform this Word proposal into a PowerPoint, which looks rather okay, it delivers immediately a lot of value. But when I try to render, let's say, an outline of my presentation of today in a Word document, and I try to transform it to PowerPoint, well, it's not that it's not usable, but it will never look like something like I'm presenting today. So we're both using it. That's something that can be measured. But for me, the value is much lower than for example, this fictive commercial person. Now, combining this with sentiment analysis, right? This is very cool. By the way, as of last Monday, so 2 days ago, you're able to use Copilot, not in preview anymore, in Excel. So if you send out surveys, you can now also use Copilot in Excel to analyze text. So not numbers anymore. They do not even need to be in a table anymore. So there are some improvements, and there also, there might be something in the works regarding to sentiment analysis. I have no clear, real details on that, but I know it's somewhere on the roadmap. So very interesting. But you can do some analysis yourself, obviously. And of course, try to measure the value. So active data is when you question people. So when you question people, you can ask things about what value does it deliver? Do you agree with this statement? Yes or no? How much time did it save you? How much of a creativity boost did this give you, right? So those are things you can and need to ask, and you need to combine those data to have some sort of a Copilot compass. Now, where to find data? I also add this on a slide, so you have this one pager afterwards you can take with you. So first of all, as I mentioned, if something's not working, people might be ending up at the service desk complaining, right? Not saying that it gets resolved, but well, they're complaining, so they're just creating a ticket. The second, of course, if you set up a community and you send out on a regular basis some surveys, you can combine those topics as well. So there's a lot of information and value in there. Next, the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So there are also a lot of statistics there, some trend lines. You can filter per application how much it's being used. There's also still a Power BI dashboard. Honestly, I haven't been using that a lot because it's very similar to the M365 admin visuals. And last one here is the Copilot dashboard. It's supported by Viva Insights, and I know what you're thinking. Oh no, not again. No more additional licenses. If you have Viva Insights licenses, there is a lot of things you can measure. This is really the how do you say, the holy grail of finding real value of Copilot. Therefore, you actually need Viva Insights licenses. But if you don't, that's still fine. You can still use the Copilot dashboard, and you can create groups and compare them to each other. So it depends a bit on how your organizational landscape looks like. So depending on that, you can find the value in these locations. Looking at the time, 10 minutes, we're good. So very quick overview. For example, this is what a Copilot dashboard looks like. So when you go to the adoption tab, so you see readiness, adoption, impact, learning. In the adoption tab, you can see your organizations, so your groups of people. You can compare them to each other. They're all aggregated and anonymized. I know in this example, they're called Cecil F and Mona K, as if they are the team managers, but it could be group 1, group B, group C, whatever, something like that. And you can see you can expand all of the applications there and see how is team A using it in Teams and why is that team not using it in Teams? Is it maybe because they don't use Teams or they don't know that they can? So these are things you can use to drive your adoption campaigns. When you look into the impact dashboard, let's say this is more for the CFO to see what do we get out of this. You can see how many meetings are summarized, how many emails are drafted or summarized. So you get the picture. I think this is now updated or being updated with actual dollar or euro signs. So you can fill in some average costs of your employees. I think it is something like that. Yeah. And it gives you some, well, actual measurements in terms of money, right? Again, it's not money saved, it's what you do with the time, right? Important to understand. Now, if you do not want to send out surveys, because I know nobody likes surveys, right? There is one thing you can do, and this is something I just recently discussed with a customer. It's just a rough idea, but he instructed that, well, our people have every 2 or 3 weeks, they have a meeting with their manager, with their leader. Why don't we just include the evaluation or the evaluation of what Copilot means for them as part of the agenda? It's a very short topic. You can see, does it deliver value? How are you using it? And of course, if you provide a very simple input method for this manager, they can all centralize all the feedback from the people they see and give insights back to, let's say, the center of excellence who wants to know what the value is inside of our organization. So when we're looking at Copilot or Gen AI, I think it might look something like this. And of course, I didn't paint this. This is again a DALL-E representation, but I honestly think that we're just there, right? We're at the very early stages. There's so much to come. And one of the things is obviously the announcement of last Monday, right? So the Copilot Wave 2 announcement of Satya and Jared. So you can scan the QR code, you get the recording later on. I can put the link in the chat as well if you like. So go ahead and read everything that was said during that session. Wrapping up, I know it's only almost 11 o'clock, but I'm already a bit hungry. One thing to remember is that this classical ROI formula, which you find all over the place, is a bit of hocus pocus. So it's not a real simple back of a napkin ROI calculation. So think not only about time, but also about the quality improvements, creativity boosts, upskilling of your employees, and the impact on employee happiness. And finally, as a wrap up, these 5 tips, they're not just tips, they're actually all related to change management, because that's what it is. Rolling out Copilot is a change management project. It's not a technical project. It really isn't. So select your knowledge workers, enthusiastic people. Those are really key. don't focus on 100 different scenarios, but try to find the real hero scenarios for people themselves by organizing workshops around it. At the fourth, set up your center of excellence and your community, and make sure to measure and adapt. Think about your Copilot compass to find the real ROI of Microsoft 365 Copilot. And that brings me to the end of my session. I still got almost 5 more minutes left. Also, feel free to engage in the chat, connect on LinkedIn. I tend to post a lot of things there on a regular basis. So if there are any questions,